In the 1960s and 1970s, no one embodied cool and composed like Steve McQueen. His smooth anti-hero roles made men envious and women infatuated. Welcome to Hollywood Mysteries. Most parents don't expect their children to become movie stars. This was true for Terrence Stephen McQueen, born on March 24, 1930, in Beech Grove, Indiana. Steve had plenty of things against him from the start. His father, William Terrence McQueen, came to Beech Grove in 1929 as a stunt pilot for a flying circus. His group left excitement, heartbreak, and plenty of fatherless kids across the Midwest. William met Julia Ann Crawford that summer, dated her, and left her when he found out she was pregnant, either before or just after a rushed wedding. Although William abandoned the family, it was clear that Steve inherited his father's adventurous spirit and taste for danger. Julia Ann was not just an innocent local girl seduced by a daring pilot. She was the only child of caring parents who gave her everything, except discipline. But rebellious by nature, she left her parents' home seeking other thrills. Free from her parents, Julia turned to alcohol, and motherhood was not going to slow her drinking. Though she was 20, an average age for first-time mothers back then, Julia didn't want to be tied down. She lived with her parents when Steve was born and stayed for about 2 years before leaving them all. From then on, Steve saw his grandparents, Victor and Lillian Crawford, as his parents. This feeling of abandonment stayed with him. He later said, "When a kid didn't have any love when he was small, he begins to wonder if he's good enough. If my mother didn't love me, and I didn't have a father, I guess I'm not very good." During the Great Depression, many American families had to make drastic changes to survive. The Crawfords moved young Steve to a farm in Slater, Missouri, to live with Lillian's brother and sister-in-law. They relied on the farm's food and work to get by. Every week, the 4 adults and Steve would go to the nearest Catholic church for Mass. McQueen held fond memories of his early farm life throughout his life. He loved being the focus of the adults' attention, and was especially close to his uncle Claude. McQueen once said, "He was a very good man, very strong, very fair. I learned a lot from him." While his grandparents' love was overshadowed by the pain of losing their daughter, Claude showered McQueen with unconditional affection. Not long after Steve moved to the farm, Claude gave him a new red tricycle for his 4th birthday. McQueen said this tricycle kicked off his interest in riding motorcycles, which was his true passion in later life. When Julia returned 4 years later to take Steve to live with her and her new husband, Claude was devastated. "The day I left the farm, Uncle Claude gave me a personal going-away present, a gold pocket watch with an inscription inside the case. The inscription read, 'To Steve, who has been a son to me.'" Young Steve McQueen had more challenges beyond his unstable early years. He was dyslexic, which made school difficult, and he also had partial deafness from an early ear infection. Just as he would become a hyperactive adult, he was an equally hyperactive child. His new stepfather had no patience for this, and often beat him. After a year of abuse, 9-year-old Steve ran away and lived on the streets. There he found a new family among gang members who taught him how to fight and steal to survive. Julia, unable to control him, finally sent McQueen back to the farm in Slater. However, when Steve was 12, she asked him to join her and her new husband in Los Angeles. His heartbroken grandparents set him off once again on a long train journey across the country. He would never be truly at ease in LA. Reflecting on his upbringing, McQueen said, "I'm out of the Midwest. It was a good place to come from. It gives you a sense of right or wrong and fairness, which I think is lacking in our society." When McQueen arrived in Los Angeles, he found his new stepfather was just as abusive as the last. This man beat both Steve and Julia, leading McQueen to later call him a prime son of a bitch. Julia once again said Steve was uncontrollable and sent him back to the farm. He stayed there for 2 more years, but at 14 he left for good on his own. Avoiding another emotional goodbye, he ran away and joined the circus. After traveling for a while, it turned out the circus wasn't for him, so he returned to Los Angeles to live with his mother and stepfather again. There he fell into bad company and resumed his petty crimes. Caught stealing hubcaps, the police handed him over to his stepfather, who beat him violently again and threw him down a flight of stairs. This was the final straw. McQueen looked up and vowed, "You lay your stinking hands on me again and I swear I'll kill ya." Julia, obeying her husband, turned Steve over to the authorities. He was then sent to the California Junior Boys Republic, a reformatory in Chino, California. Ironically, Julia's decision to abandon her son in favor of her violent husband turned out to be the best thing for McQueen. Initially, he wasn't much liked by the other boys, but he soon adapted. He became a model student, was elected to the Boys' Council, and became a role model for younger boys. Though he left at 16, he never forgot the place. As a famous actor, he often returned to visit, encouraging the students to better themselves. He always replied personally to letters from Boys Republic and frequently requested bulk freebies like electric razors and jeans from studios, which he secretly donated to the boys. When Steve turned 16, Julia was single again and allowed him to live with her in Greenwich Village, New York. One day at the docks, he met two merchant marines who invited him to join their crew to the Dominican Republic. McQueen eagerly accepted but soon realized he didn't like life at sea. When the ship docked, he left and got a job as a towel boy at a Dominican brothel. Later, he decided to return to the U.S. and worked on another ship to get back to Texas. There, he took various jobs, including oil rigger, lumberjack, and carnival barker. In 1947, at age 17, McQueen already had a rough and complicated past but no clear future. Like a lot of young men in his shoes, he decided to join the United States Marine Corps. At first, he thrived with the discipline and training, quickly reaching the rank of private first class and joining an armored unit. However, his rebellious nature soon caused problems. Over his 3 years in the Marines, he was promoted and demoted 7 times. After going AWOL for 2 weeks to be with a girl, he was caught by Shore Patrol and spent 41 days in the brig. This experience was a turning point for McQueen. He realized the Marine Corps would break him if he didn't adapt, so he began to follow orders and improve his performance. His hard work paid off when he saved 5 fellow Marines' lives. While stationed in the Arctic, he noticed a tank crossing a frozen lake as the ice started to crack. He ran across the ice to warn the others, helping them escape before the tank sank into the icy water. For his bravery, he was assigned to Washington, D.C. as part of the honor guard protecting President Harry Truman's yacht. This was his final assignment, and he left the Marines in 1950. Reflecting on his service, McQueen said, "The Marines gave me discipline I could live with. By the time I got out, I could deal with things on a more realistic level. All in all, despite my problems, I liked my time in the Marines." Using the GI Bill, McQueen enrolled in Sanford Meisner's neighborhood playhouse to study acting. Although he often said, "In my own mind, I'm not sure that acting is something for a grown man to be doing," he pursued it. His first stage line was reportedly "Alle is forlorn," apparently Yiddish for all is lost. He performed in plays like Peg O' My Heart, 2 Fingers of Pride, and The Member of the Wedding. He also appeared as a judge on Jukebox Jury in 1953 to 1954. McQueen raced motorcycles on weekends on Long Island. He saved enough to buy his first bike, a Harley Davidson. He earned about $100 each weekend, a good income for a young bachelor in 1950s New York. He once said, "I'm not sure whether I'm an actor who races or a racer who acts." In 1955, McQueen landed a role on Broadway in A Hat Full of Rain. By then, he had saved enough money to pursue a career in movies. He moved to California, found a small house in Echo Park, and started searching for film roles. He found work on television, guest starring in various series. His first TV role was in 1955 on an episode of the Goodyear television playhouse called The Shivington Raid. The next year, he appeared on the United States Steel Hour and in a 2-part episode of The Defender. This last role caught the attention of Hilly Elkins, a well-known Hollywood manager who thought McQueen had potential. Elkins suggested McQueen audition for small roles in B-grade movies, leading to his first film role in Somebody Up There Likes Me, where he had a small uncredited part. During filming, he met fellow racing enthusiast Paul Newman and was directed by Robert Wise. Elkins also introduced McQueen to actress Neil Adams, who became his wife on November 2, 1956. They had 2 children, Terry Leslie in 1959 and Chad in 1960. McQueen and Adams focused on building their acting careers during the early years of their marriage. In 1957 and 1958, McQueen appeared in several TV series, including Studio One in Hollywood, West Point, The 20th Century Fox Hour, The Big Story, and Climax. But none of these opened any doors for him. He said, "I scrounged around for the next couple of years, trying to get the scam on the human race, and just where the hell I fitted in, I discovered there were no openings." After appearing with Dale Robertson on NBC's Tales of Wells Fargo, Elkins secured him a guest role as a Confederate soldier turned bounty hunter on 2 episodes of Trackdown. McQueen's character, Josh Randall, was well received. Years later, Robert Culp, the star of Trackdown, claimed credit for teaching McQueen the art of the fast draw, saying McQueen became better at it by the second day. Unlike typical Western heroes, Randall was an anti-hero. Bounty hunters were usually seen as operating outside the law, especially on shows like Gunsmoke and Bonanza. To soften his image, the producers made Randall kinder and more sympathetic than the usual lawman. He would even help captives escape if he believed they were innocent. Randall's signature weapon was a cut-off Winchester mare's leg, a short rifle. McQueen's character became so popular that by September 1958, he had his own series, Wanted, Dead or Alive, on NBC. The show ran for 3 seasons and made the top 10 in ratings during its second season. It featured guest stars like DeForest Kelley, Lon Chaney Jr., and a young Michael Landon. Looking back at the show, McQueen said, 3 hard mother-grabbing years, but I learned my trade, and it gave me discipline. Wanted, Dead or Alive was McQueen's only lead role in a TV series, but it made him a household name. In 1958, McQueen took his first credited movie role in Never Love a Stranger, which led to his first leading role in the sci-fi classic The Blob. He was offered a small salary plus 10% of the film's profits, but he declined, doubting the movie's success. Instead, he took a flat fee of $3,000, which turned out to be a poor choice as The Blob grossed nearly $4 million. Critics, however, were not kind, with one saying, "If the acting is pretty terrible itself, there is becomingly not a single familiar face in the cast, headed by young Steve McQueen and Annetta Corsaw, but Irving H. Milgate's dialogue flattens as much as The Blob rounds." This was McQueen's first critical review, but they would improve over time, and The Blob remains a beloved B-movie classic to many fans of the genre. After a role in the mediocre The Great St. Louis Bank Robbery, McQueen appeared with Frank Sinatra in Never So Few. Sinatra saw McQueen's potential, and ensured director John Sturges gave him extra close-ups. McQueen thrived in a macho role, driving a Jeep at high speeds and engaging in plenty of fights. After Never So Few, McQueen continued working on his TV series and made a couple of appearances on Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He also worked on what would become his first major movie hit, The Magnificent Seven. It looked like his TV schedule would conflict with the film's shooting, but a racing accident gave him a break from the show, and he took extra leave to recuperate. But while he was supposed to be resting, he went to film the movie. Directed by Sturges, The Magnificent Seven featured McQueen alongside major Western stars like Charles Bronson, Yul Brynner, and James Coburn. McQueen played the quiet, intense Vic Tanner, bringing the character to life with unique touches like wiping his hat's brim and shaking a shotgun round before loading it. These habits annoyed Brynner, who had requested McQueen for the role but didn't like being upstaged. Brynner even hired someone to count how many times McQueen touched his hat during their scenes together, in case this distraction took the spotlight away from him. Their rivalry extended to shooting scenes. McQueen, with his quick draw from 3 years on a weekly Western, intimidated Brynner, who refused to be in shootouts with him. Brynner, half an inch taller, would often stand on a mound of dirt during their scenes, which McQueen would secretly kick down when Brynner wasn't looking. Despite the on-set pettiness, The Magnificent Seven was a massive success and remains an all-time favorite for Western fans. Though McQueen didn't receive much individual praise from critics, the movie launched him into stardom. His next film, Hell is for Heroes, brought more on-set strife. Robert Peroche, the writer, was set to direct and produce, but left due to difficulties with McQueen. The film's low budget and poor props frustrated McQueen and the cast. These issues are evident on screen, such as when McQueen repeatedly pulls the trigger on his M3 grease gun before it fires. McQueen was angry with his agent for involving him in the film, causing a tense atmosphere on set. In a review, a columnist warned, "Steve McQueen is his own worst enemy." Singer Bobby Darin, who had clashed on set with McQueen, quipped, "Not while I'm still alive." McQueen's performance did receive some praise. One critic noted, "An arresting performance by Steve McQueen. A young actor with presence and a keen sense of timing is the outstanding feature of Hell is for Heroes." The friction on set and his passion for racing nearly derailed McQueen's acting career early on. He was ready to quit movies and devote himself to cars. By 1961, he had enough money to try professional racing. He competed in the British Touring Car Championship at Brands Hatch in 1961, finishing third in a BMC Mini. He later remarked, "An actor is a puppet, manipulated by a dozen other people. Auto racing has dignity." However, it turned out acting was far more of a reliable source of income. His next film would be an opportunity to make use of his love of machines. In The Great Escape, McQueen's passion for motorcycles shone through. An important part of the movie featured him riding his own 650cc Triumph TR6 trophy motorcycle. The film was a huge success, grossing over $7 million and becoming the year's highest-grossing movie. It remains an action classic and earned McQueen multiple awards, including the Silver Prize for Best Actor at the Moscow International Film Festival. Off the set, McQueen's love for motorcycles continued. He bought a Triumph 500cc from his friend and stunt double Bud Ekins, and became a regular at events like the Baja 1000 and the Elsinore Grand Prix. In 1964, he and Ekins represented the U.S. on 2 Triumph TR6 trophies at the International 6 Days Trial in Erfurt, East Germany. After The Great Escape, McQueen used his newfound wealth and status to establish his own film company, Solar Productions. He explained his shift in focus. "I've got a feeling I'm leaving stardom behind, you know. I'm gradually becoming more of a filmmaker, acquiring a different kind of dignity from that which you achieve in acting. After all, I'm no matinee idol. And I'm getting older. I don't think I can be doing my kind of thing in the 70s. I want to be on more of the creative side of the business." Solar Productions' first project, Soldier in the Rain, paired McQueen with comedian Jackie Gleason. Critic Craig Butler described it as an absorbing film that deserves to be much better known. Soldier in the Rain is a sometimes uneasy blend of comedy and drama that doesn't always quite come off, but has so much going for it that one is glad to overlook its flaws. The film explores a strong friendship between 2 very different personalities in the peacetime army. While Gleason and McQueen's bond seemed unlikely at first, it felt natural and inevitable as the story progressed. Despite its merits, the film wasn't a major hit, nor was McQueen's next movie, Love with the Proper Stranger, although it earned him a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor. The second film from Solar Productions, Baby, the Rain Must Fall, was also not very successful, but featured an interesting musical number with McQueen and an uncredited Glenn Campbell. The next big success for McQueen and Solar Productions was The Cincinnati Kid. Variety praised it as a taut, well-turned-out production, and said McQueen was the near-perfect delineator of the title role. However, it went head-to-head with Paul Newman's The Hustler at the box office, and came off as the loser. In 1966, McQueen returned to westerns and Nevada Smith, playing a 16-year-old of mixed Caucasian and Native American heritage. This was an odd casting choice since McQueen was 35 and not remotely Native American. The film did, however, contribute to Hollywood legend, inspiring the name for George Lucas's Indiana Jones, and leading to on-set safety improvements after McQueen was almost trampled to death by cattle. McQueen then starred in The Sand Pebbles, this time returning to his strengths. Filming in Taiwan was tough as the Republic of China withheld actors' passports until additional taxes were paid, or in other words, bribes. This was especially stressful for McQueen, who had his family with him. After finally leaving Taiwan, filming moved to Hong Kong where heavy rain caused further delays. McQueen also fell seriously ill from an abscessed tooth, which worsened because he avoided seeing a non-American dentist. This health issue then caused production delays. Looking back on the experience, McQueen said he needed no time in purgatory because he had paid for all of his sins during the making of The Sand Pebbles. Still, it was worth the pain as his performance earned him his only Oscar nomination, playing a sailor stuck in a ship's engine room during World War II. Following the grueling production of The Sand Pebbles, McQueen took a year off before returning with The Thomas Crown Affair in 1968. This film was one of the first to use split-screen technology to show simultaneous action in different locations. McQueen had seen the technique in another film and convinced director Norman Jewison to include it. This formalist trick added intensity to the flirtatious chess game between his character and Faye Dunaway's. Apparently, while McQueen was quick in a car, he was somewhat slower with women. According to Hollywood lore, it took him 8 hours to get a good take of a 1-minute kiss with Dunaway. Alternatively, some say he might have been savoring the pleasures of the filmmaking process opposite the very beautiful Dunaway. As usual, McQueen did as many of his own stunts as insurance allowed. He played polo in the action-heavy number 2 position and drove a dune buggy along the Massachusetts coast. The Ferrari 275/4 NART, driven by Dunaway's character, fascinated him, and he later bought one of the only 10 ever made. Although The Thomas Crown Affair was McQueen's favorite film, critics were less enthusiastic. One review noted, "When McQueen finishes his phone calls and Wexler finishes his multiple images, and Jewison finishes his enigmatic double reverse plot twists, the balloon explodes. After the initial suspense falls off, we're left with a love affair between McQueen and Faye Dunaway, who plays the insurance investigator. Give the girl credit, she's better than Nancy Sinatra playing Elvis Presley's Internal Revenue agent in Speedway." Roger Ebert described the movie as possibly the most underplotted, underwritten, over-photographed film of the year, which is not to say it isn't great to look at. It is. The film was, on the other hand, a hit with audiences, earning over $10 million and achieving cult status in later years. McQueen's Purcell sunglasses from the film became a fashion icon for those wanting to emulate the king of cool. In 1969, McQueen experienced a life-changing and nearly life-ending event. On August 9, 1969, Jay Sebring invited McQueen and his girlfriend to a party at the home he shared with actress Sharon Tate. McQueen's girlfriend suggested they spend a romantic evening at her place instead, so he declined. The next morning, McQueen learned that Tate, Sebring, and 3 other guests had been murdered by Charles Manson's followers. Shocked and scared, McQueen immediately bought a pistol, which he then carried at all times. 2 months later, police revealed that McQueen had been on Manson's hit list because Solar Productions had refused to buy one of his screenplays. A few months after the Thomas Crown Affair, McQueen's next big project, Bullitt, was released. The film featured McQueen driving a Ford Mustang through the streets of San Francisco at over 100 miles per hour. He was only allowed to do a portion of the driving due to the dangerous twists and turns, but the car chase became legendary. It is often listed among the 15 greatest movie car chases of all time. One critic wrote, "This is the one, the first, the granddaddy, the chase on the top of almost every list." Another raved, "Bullitt, as everybody has heard by now, also includes a brilliant chase scene. McQueen is chased by and chases a couple of gangsters up and down San Francisco's hills. They slam into intersections, bounce halfway down the next hill, scrape by half a dozen near misses, sideswipe each other, and leave your stomach somewhere in the basement for about 11 minutes. McQueen had hoped to buy one of the 2 Ford Mustangs used in Bullitt, but he never could. One was so damaged it had to be scrapped, and the other was sold to a studio employee and became a legendary kind of lost ark for car collectors. To better understand his character, Frank Bullitt, McQueen collaborated with Dave Toschi, an inspector with the San Francisco Police Department. Toschi inspired Bullitt's use of a shoulder holster and quick draw. Shortly after Bullitt's release, Toschi became involved in the Zodiac Killer case. Bullitt became Solar Productions' most successful film, released by Warner Brothers on October 17, 1968. It impressed both critics and audiences, along with awards for sound and screenplay. Renata Adler of the New York Times praised it, calling it a terrific movie just right for Steve McQueen, fast, well acted, written the way people talk. She highlighted the car chases, noting, "Nobody drives better than Steve McQueen." Adler added that McQueen embodied a special kind of aware, existential cool, less taut and hard shell than Bogart, less lost and adrift than Mastroianni, a little of both. She concluded, McQueen simply gets better all the time. In 2004, the New York Times included Bullitt in its list of the best 1,000 movies ever made. Despite its success, Bullitt exceeded its budget so much that Warner Brothers canceled the remaining contract for 7 more films from Solar Productions. When the movie grossed nearly $40 million, Warner Brothers tried to bring McQueen back, but he declined, releasing his next film, The Ravers, through United Artists. Bullitt's success also attracted the younger generation, many who adhered to the trust no one over 30 mantra that arrived with force in the late 1960s. Although McQueen was nearly 40, he became an icon of youthful cool, but he was not totally in keeping with the 60s zeitgeist. Unlike many Hollywood actors, he held somewhat conservative political views. Having risen from extreme poverty through sheer determination, he believed strongly in self-reliance. He refused to participate in the 1963 March on Washington for Civil Rights and did not support Senator Robert F. Kennedy's 1968 presidential campaign. Instead, he backed Richard Nixon and supported the Vietnam War. Despite his conservative stance, he still ended up on Nixon's enemies list. McQueen responded with his usual humor by flying a giant American flag at his home. In 1971, McQueen starred in Le Mans, directed by Lee H. Katzin. This was a true passion project for McQueen. The film included footage from the real 24 Hours of Le Mans from June 1970, with Solar Productions using a Porsche 9082, equipped with cameras to film the live race. McQueen initially wanted the film edited using the multi-frame technique from the Thomas Crown Affair, but Christopher Chapman, who pioneered the method, advised against it, saying, "It was much too big of a film, with too many writers. It wouldn't work that way." McQueen wanted to actually race with Formula One world champion Jackie Stewart as his co-driver, but the film's investors threatened to withdraw their funding if he did anything that dangerous. Motor racing in the early 1970s was incredibly risky, with many fatalities occurring on a regular basis. Instead, he opted for a summer of periodic racing rather than participating in Le Mans for real. The filmmaking process did not make the race any safer. Driver David Piper lost part of his leg in a severe crash. McQueen was accustomed to the risks, having competed in many races and finishing second at the 12 Hours of Sebring in 1970. However, the Hollywood crew was taken aback by the noise, heat, and danger of motor racing. The movie became popular among racing enthusiasts, but the general public was less interested. The lack of dialogue, with most of the film focusing on the race, and the unfamiliarity of Le Mans among Americans contributed to its box office failure. McQueen's next project was a motorcycle racing documentary called On Any Sunday. He not only starred in it but also funded it through Solar Productions. He explained his motivation. Most bike flicks in the past concentrated on the outlaw crap, Hell's Angels and all of that stuff, which is about as far away from the real world of motorcycle racing as I am from Lionel Barrymore. Brando's movie The Wild One in the early 1950s set motorcycle racing back about 200 years. By this time, McQueen's star power was evident. When director Bruce Brown wanted to film at the Marine Corps base at Camp Pendleton, McQueen facilitated access. Brown recalled, "I figured there would be no way to get approval to film on the Marine base. Steve McQueen said he'd see what he could find out. The next day he called and told me to contact some general, and the next thing you know, we are shooting the beach sequences." It was pretty amazing the doors he was able to open. As McQueen's career flourished, his personal life deteriorated. In 1970, he and his wife, Neil Adams, separated. Though they eventually divorced, McQueen stayed deeply involved in his children's lives, determined they wouldn't experience the same parental neglect he did. During their separation, McQueen worked on Junior Bonner, about an aging rodeo rider trying to reclaim his former glory. The film lost almost $3 million at the box office, but received critical praise. One critic noted, "The movie is made to order for both McQueen and Preston, but the loveliest performance is that of Miss Lupino, whose first screen appearance in this is something like 17 years. Junior Bonner, which looks like a rodeo film and sounds like a rodeo film, is a superior family comedy in disguise." Director Sam Peckinpah later joked, "I made a film where nobody got shot, and nobody went to see it." During the filming of Junior Bonner, McQueen began a relationship with co-star Barbara Lee. Their brief romance ended when Lee decided to have an abortion, which was too much for the Catholic McQueen to handle. By the time McQueen filmed The Getaway in 1972, he was the highest paid actor in the world. During production, he started another affair with actress Ali MacGraw, which led to his divorce from Neil Adams. McQueen and MacGraw married in August 1973. The Getaway was released and earned more than $36 million for Solar Productions, making it one of McQueen's most profitable films. Both Adams and MacGraw must have been puzzled by McQueen's contradictory approach to his health. On one side, he was dedicated to a rigorous 2-hour daily workout routine, which included weightlifting and running. He also practiced the martial art Tang So Do and incorporated some of its techniques into his films. On the other side, he had a self-destructive streak, regularly using marijuana and cocaine, smoking heavily, and often drinking excessively. Whether drunk or sober, McQueen always had a playful side. He and James Garner were good friends and neighbors, with Garner's house just below McQueen's. McQueen recounted a prank he often played. I could see that Jim was neat around his place. Flowers trimmed, no papers in the yard, grass always cut. So to piss him off, I'd start lobbing empty beer cans down the hill into his driveway. He'd have his drive all spick and span when he left the house, then get home to find all these empty cans. Took him a long time to figure out it was me. In the early 1970s, McQueen created 2 more documentaries on subjects he loved. The first, Bruce Lee, the Man and the Legend, showcased his passion for martial arts. The second, The Magnificent Rebel, detailed the making of his hit movie, Papillon. Filmed in Jamaica and Spain, Papillon tells the story of a man wrongfully sentenced to a French penal colony. The most famous scene, McQueen's cliff dive, was actually filmed in Hawaii. Even at 43, McQueen insisted on performing the dive himself rather than using a stuntman. He later described it as one of the most exhilarating experiences of my life. Papillon received mixed reviews upon release, but has since become a cult classic. Some consider it McQueen's best work, while others point out flaws. Roger Ebert remarked, "You know, something has gone wrong when you want the hero to escape simply so that the movie can be over." Conversely, another critic praised, as played by Steve McQueen, Papillon is as all-American as a Rover boy. He is manly, alert, self-reliant, deeply imbued with a sense of fair play. His love of freedom is so great that he must attempt the impossible, that is, to escape from Devil's Island. The film received Oscar nominations, and McQueen was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture Actor in a Drama. In 1973, McQueen traveled to England to discuss a film project with Oliver Reed. Reed showed me his country mansion, and we got on well. He then suggested he take me to his favorite London nightclub. Although McQueen was known for his heavy drinking, he discovered Reed couldn't hold his liquor when Reed vomited on McQueen's clothes. The staff rushed around and found me some new clothes, but they couldn't get me any shoes. I had to spend the rest of the night smelling of Oliver Reed's sick. In 1974, McQueen began working on his final major film, The Towering Inferno. Part of the 1970s disaster movie trend, the film boasted a star-studded cast, including Paul Newman, Faye Dunaway, and William Holden. With so many big names, egos clashed, particularly between longtime rivals Newman and McQueen, who both wanted top billing. To resolve this, they invented dual top billing, with Newman's name in the upper right corner and McQueen's in the lower left. This meant Newman had top billing for top to bottom readers, and McQueen for left to right readers. McQueen's name appeared first in trailers, but Newman's name was first in the credits. Both were promised equal pay and the same number of lines, so every time one's part was rewritten, the others had to be adjusted as well to maintain balance. The Towering Inferno was a critical commercial success, and some even consider it the best disaster movie ever made, although the jury is out on that. However, McQueen seemed tired of acting by now, and soon he began to withdraw from Hollywood. The reasons for his departure remain unclear, though it is known that his wife, Ali MacGraw, suffered a miscarriage during their marriage. For the next several years, the couple traveled the country in a motorhome and raced motorcycles, many of them vintage Indians. For quick getaways, they used McQueen's various planes, like the 1946 Piper J3 Cub, the 1945 Stearman with his Reform School student number as its tail number, or his 1931 Pitcairn PA-8 biplane, once owned by legendary fighter ace Eddie Rickenbacker. McQueen's only movie appearance during this time was a small uncredited role in Dixie Dynamite. Hearing that the film needed a dirt bike racer for stunts, McQueen, now overweight and sporting a bushy beard, arrived in a motorcycle helmet to conceal his identity. After performing his trademark daredevil stunts, he lined up with the extras to collect his $120 daily wage, pulling off his helmet as he did so. As he walked away, a production assistant exclaimed, "Is that the Steve McQueen?" McQueen just kept walking. In 1978, after his divorce from McGraw, McQueen returned to filmmaking with An Enemy of the People. He played a 19th century doctor, a role completely against his type. He told a reporter, "The main thing I was shooting for was not to make bucks, but to have something I could believe in." As the film's executive producer, he allowed it to go $1 million over budget. However, Warner Brothers struggled to market the film, as it featured McQueen, one of Hollywood's most virile actors, made up to look like an old man. They tried to promote it by also showing images from his previous films, like The Sand Pebbles and Bullet. This was a mistake, as it was a long way from an action movie, and audiences were disappointed by this more serious tone. Following his cerebral attempt at filmmaking, McQueen returned to his roots with Tom Horn in 1980. He portrayed the title character, an Army scout who becomes a professional gunman. However, his career takes a dark turn when he mistakenly kills a shepherd while hunting cattle rustlers for wealthy ranchers, and is subsequently hanged for murder. Similar to his previous film, The Hunter, Tom Horn was loosely based on a true story. During production, McQueen took on multiple roles, including co-producing, starring, and briefly directing. Amid the filming chaos, McQueen began experiencing breathing difficulties, which seemed like a stress reaction. However, it was the first sign of a deadly disease that would soon claim him. Determined to complete The Hunter, McQueen pushed through despite his worsening cough. The film, about a modern-day bounty hunter in Kankakee County, Illinois, allowed McQueen to distance himself from Hollywood and reconnect with his childhood environment. After experiencing shortness of breath again in 1978, McQueen quit smoking and took antibiotics to address his persistent cough. When these measures failed, he underwent a lung biopsy, revealing that he had pleural mesothelioma, a rare and incurable form of cancer often linked to asbestos exposure. McQueen speculated that his exposure could have come from various sources, including his time in the Marines, soundstage insulation, car brake pads, or even a fire-resistant bandage he used during the 1971 12 Hours of Sebring race. On January 16, 1980, McQueen married Barbara Minty, a professional model he had been dating since his separation from McGraw. She was well aware that their marriage would be tragically short. Just after their wedding, McQueen's cancer began to spread throughout his body. He wished to keep his illness private, but the National Enquirer got hold of the story and exposed his condition, revealing that he had terminal cancer, which added to his stress. In July, McQueen and Minty traveled to Rosarito Beach, Mexico, for unconventional cancer treatments not approved in the U.S. McQueen paid over $100,000 for 3 months of controversial treatments, including coffee enemas, live cell injections from sheep and cows, and a mysterious anti-cancer drug that the FDA had refused to approve. These treatments were administered by William Kelly, whose medical license had been revoked in the U.S. in 1976. Despite Kelly's claim that McQueen was cured and could resume normal activities, his condition worsened. Large abdominal tumors prevented him from eating, prompting him to return to Mexico for surgery to remove a 5-pound tumor from his liver. American doctors had refused the operation, fearing his heart wouldn't survive it. Checking into a small clinic under the name Sam Shepard, McQueen underwent the surgery and died 12 hours later, on November 7, 1980, of heart failure. His final words were, "I did it." He was just 50 years old. Death has not slowed the importance of Steve McQueen. His early passing seems to have solidified the King of Cool as a true American icon, underlined by the fact that even as much as 30 years after his passing, he was still the highest-earning dead celebrity in the U.S. His tough, cool image is one which has gone extinct in modern movie stars, partly due to changing tastes, but also no doubt partly because no one could do it quite like Steve McQueen. That's about all for this episode. We'd love it if you left us a like or subscribe to the channel. As always, it really helps out. Plus, you get to join in with all of our fun movie polls and quizzes on our community page, along with all of our other subscribers. And if you want more Hollywood mysteries, check out our Patreon and members' perks for all the benefits we have on offer. Sweet dreams.